beautiful friends. My name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm so thankful that you're here. Today it is time to do my May TBR. Now, y'all, May is looking to be a little bit chaotic because, first of all, I am one of the co-hosts for the Mystery and Mayhem Readathon. This was created by Maddie over at This Bookish Cottage, and I will be sure to leave her announcement video as well as my announcement video down below in case you are interested. But I will be helping to co-host the Lassies team, and I am so incredibly excited about it. But of course, because I will be participating in that and also helping with sprints and stuff, that is going to be a little bit busy. And I'm also going to be participating, at least casually, in Escape the Readathon. This was created by Lexi over at Books with Lexi. Once again, I will be sure to leave her announcement video down below. I'm sure that everybody has heard of this readathon. It is a very, very popular competitive team-based readathon, but this will be my first time participating. I decided to join because I wanted to support Heather over at Books and Heather because she is going to be one of the co-hosts for the podcaster team. So I decided to go ahead and join that team. Like I said, I've never participated. I heard that it could get a little bit wild and crazy, so I'm expecting a good time. But between Escape the Readathon and Mystery and Mayhem, there is going to be a lot going on in May. However, I did want to be sure that I still was able to play my TBR game for May, especially since this is going to be the last iteration of my TBR game in its current form. I am currently redoing the board. Now, the board in terms of its form and structure, that's not going anywhere, right? Because my TBR game is based around Sorry, so it's still going to have the similar Sorry structure. But I will be redoing a lot of the prompts. You will see several repeat prompts, but there's also going to be a lot of new prompts incorporated on the board, and I'm also going to be including some new elements of chaos to my TBR game starting in June, hopefully, if I can get it done by then. And so I wanted to go ahead and play my TBR game this one last time in its current form. But of course, before we can get into all that, I have to recap how I did with April's TBR. Now, in terms of the mandatory reads for April, for my Patreon book club pick, I had to read This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead, which I absolutely did complete. For the Bookworm Bitches book club, which is a book club that I help moderate over on Goodreads, the selection was The Wedding People by Allison Esbach, and I did absolutely read that. Now, my Patreon pick for the month of May was The Maid's Diary by Laura Ann White. This was Andrea's pick, and unfortunately, I think I've ultimately decided to DNF it because I was not enjoying it. I don't know if I was just really distracted while I was reading it, but I didn't care about anything that was happening to it. I wasn't invested in the story. My mind kept wandering while I was listening to it. And then ultimately, something else, I think like a hold, came in from my library, and I jumped to that instead, and I have not once thought about going back to The Maid's Diary. So I think that's a sign that I just don't care about it. So I officially have set it down and DNF'd it. And I think I have ultimately also decided to DNF Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix, which was the book we were reading for the Grady Hendrix author read-along that was also going on in my Patreon. I got through about 130 pages of that story, and I just wasn't enjoying it at all. For the first 130 plus pages, like nothing was happening. I was pretty bored. I was disengaged. And then once things started to actually happen, they were a little bit weird. I really didn't understand what was going on, and it just wasn't holding my attention. So I decided to DNF that one. For my challenge pulls, I had to read an anticipated release, and for that I selected This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead because that was absolutely an anticipated read. I also had to read a book that was set in a manor, mansion, or estate. Now, originally I was going to read The Maid's Diary for this, but after I decided to DNF it, I had to look elsewhere, and I realized that Look in the Mirror by Catherine Steadman, which was a book that I had read prior to April, would actually satisfy that prompt, so I ultimately decided to use that instead. So I didn't actually complete this prompt in April, but I was able to complete it with a book that I had already read prior to April. And then the final challenge poll was to read a book that involves digging up the past, and for that I selected We Are Watching by Allison Galen. Moving on into gameplay, if you remember, my gameplay from last month didn't really net me very many prompts. I kept having to draw over and over just to get more than 1 or 2 books on my TBR. But the very first prompt that I had to satisfy was to read a bookish book, and for that I actually selected We Are Watching by Allison Galen because that definitely features books heavily. I also had to read a book with blue on the cover, and for that I selected The Last Love Note by Emma Gray, which I read and really, really enjoyed. And then the final prompt was to pull from the Challenge Cup, and that was to read another anticipated release. And unexpectedly, Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez actually came in from the library, and I was stoked. So I jumped on that one and I read it, and I loved it. I think it's one of Abby Jimenez's best for sure. So now that April has been recapped, let's go ahead and talk about my mandatory reads. So for my Patreon book club, we are going to be reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and I am incredibly excited about this one. I absolutely love Emily Henry. She is one of my favorite contemporary romance authors. And from what I remember about the synopsis of this follows 2 writers, and they are competing for the opportunity to tell the story of a celebrity or somebody who's very infamous or well known. And they are working directly with this person, but this person is only giving each of them different parts of their story. And so these writers have to kind of write what they already have. And I think like the winner is going to be able to tell the story. But of course, I think that they are going to fall in love. It's going to be kind of like like a rivals, competitors to lovers situation, and maybe ultimately this becomes a joint project between the two. I don't know, I'm here for it. I absolutely trust Emily Henry. I'm very much digging the synopsis of this one, and I'm very, very excited. And then next we have to do my patron pick. So everybody at the domino tier and above gets to select one book that they want me to read, and this can be a book directly from my physical or virtual TBR, or it can be a book that they want me to read based on my reading tastes. So let's go ahead and screen record and see what I get. Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. Okay, I am so incredibly excited. That was Jarrett's selection. So thank you so much to Jarrett for selecting that one for me. I'm very late to the game on this one. I added it to my TBR because I've heard literally nothing but amazing things about this book from everybody who has read it. Now, I have never read anything by Mira Grant / Shauna McGuire, so I don't know what to expect in terms of the writing or anything like that, but I do know that Mira Grant has a new release coming out this year, and so if I love this one, I really want to check out her newest release as well. If I remember correctly, Into the Drowning Deep is about killer mermaids. So it's supposed to be like a sci-fi / horror genre blend, and I am intrigued. This says, 7 years ago, the Antargoddess set off on a voyage to the Mariana Trench to film a mockumentary bringing to life ancient sea creatures of legend. It was lost at sea with all hands. Some have called it a hoax. Others have called it a maritime tragedy. Now, a new crew has been assembled. This time, they're not out to entertain. Some seek to validate their life's work. Some seek the greatest hunt of all. Some seek the truth. But for the ambitious young scientist, Victoria Stewart, this is a voyage to uncover the fate of the sister she lost. Whatever the truth may be, it will only be found below the waves, but the secrets of the deep come with a price. So I am really, really, really intrigued by this one, and I'm excited to get to this. And then next we have the author read along. So everybody at the top 2 tiers of my Patreon, we do an author read along where every 3 months we will select a new author, and then we will vote on the 3 books by them that we want to read. And this time John Mars won. And the very first book that we will be reading by John Mars is The One. Now, if I remember correctly, this is like the very first book that he wrote that was that sci-fi thriller genre blend. And a lot of his books that have come out, like The Passengers, are set in that same world. A simple DNA test is all it takes. Just a quick mouth swab, and soon you'll be matched with your perfect partner, the one you were genetically made for. That's the promise made by Match Your DNA. The company announced that they had found the gene that pairs each of us with our soulmate. Since then, millions of people around the world have been matched, but the discovery has its downside. Test results have led to the breakup of countless relationships and upended the traditional ideas of dating, romance, and love. Now, 5 very different people have received the notification that they've been matched. They're each about to meet their one true love, but happily ever after isn't guaranteed for everyone because even soulmates have secrets, and some are more shocking than others. So I think that this is the only book that is this genre blend that I haven't actually read from John Mars. I haven't read any of his psychological thrillers. Those will be coming up a little bit later, but I'm really excited to read this very first book that actually started it all. So this one is going to be upcoming as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about the readathons. So with Mystery and Mayhem, there is a set of main prompts, and you could stack the points for the prompts. So you can find a book that fits multiple prompts, and then each team has their own designated color on the cover, and then as well as something that they can look for on the cover of each book to give them additional bonus points. And I feel like the main prompts as well as the team specific prompts are so general that it will be easy to kind of fit any book that I read into these prompts to at least get some of the points, if that makes sense. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've selected a TBR for the most part for the main 6 Escape the Readathon prompts, and then I'm going to be trying to fit them into Mystery and Mayhem. Same with the prompts that I'm likely going to land on with my TBR game. So let's go ahead and start with the Escape the Readathon prompts. The first location is the dining room, and that is to read a book that matches your current outfit. So for this one, I decided to not take it literally, as in find a book cover that matches the outfit that I was wearing at the time that I selected the TBR, but I decided to find a book whose content matched the shirt that I was wearing. So when I actually was making this TBR, I was wearing my Abraxas shirt. You can actually see that shirt within the thumbnail of the video that I just posted talking about reading the best books of 2024 according to Booktube. So in honor of our favorite wyvern Abraxas, I decided to go ahead and select Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. Now, wyverns in this story, they are not the heroes. The dragons are the heroes, but still they are featured heavily. And I need to get to this one. My library hold is about to come in for this one, and I need to go ahead and take advantage of it. And in honor of this book, I don't know if you're going to be able to tell, but I kind of like matched my eyeshadow to the cover of this as well, so that it was at least physically matching something that I was wearing. I wasn't necessarily in a hurry to get to this because I know that the sequel is not coming out for another year or more, but this is on my physical TBR, and I am trying to completely obliterate my physical TBR this year. And so this is one that I actually have to get to in order to do that. So this is going to be for the dining room. All right, next we have the bar, and that is to read a genre blend. Now I have plenty of options that I could choose from, right? Like I just talked about Into the Drowning Deep, which is a sci-fi horror blend. I just talked about The One, which is a sci-fi thriller blend. But the one that I already had on my TBR, because yet again, I own this one and it's a hold coming in from my library, The Sirens by Amelia Hart, which I think is really interesting because this is another story that is going to deal with mermaids in some capacity, right? You have sirens here. But I absolutely loved Wayward by Amelia Hart. And when I saw that she was coming out with a new book, I absolutely jumped on it. I have this stunning Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. I mean, look at those edges, y'all. But this is going to be like a historical magical realism type story, and I am here for it. This says, 2019, Lucy awakens in the middle of the night with her hands around her ex-lover's throat. Horrified, she flees to her older sister's house on the Australian coast, hoping Jess can help explain the vivid dreams that preceded the attack. But she is nowhere to be found. Desperate for answers, Lucy finds and begins to read her sister's adolescent diary. 1999, 20 years earlier. Jess is a lonely 16-year-old in a rural town in the middle of the continent. Diagnosed with a rare allergy to water, she has always felt different until her young, charming art teacher takes an interest in her drawings, seeing a power and maturity in them and in her that no one else has. 1800, twin sisters Mary and Eliza are torn from their home in Ireland and forced onto a convict ship bound for Australia. Since their mothers drowned when they were girls, they feared the ocean, but as the boat bears them further and further from all they know, they feel the water calling to them. As Lucy awaits Jess's return, strange rumors surrounding her sister's small town start to emerge. Numerous men have disappeared at sea. Tiny baby was found hidden in a cave, and sailors tell of hearing women's voices on the waves. A breathtaking tale of female resilience and the bonds of sisterhood across time and space, The Sirens captures the power of dreams and the mystery and the magic of the sea. That sounds incredibly atmospheric. Wayward was certainly atmospheric, and this just sounds atmospheric in a different way because it's going to deal heavily with the sea. So I am 100% here for this. I am very, very much looking forward to this one. All right, and then the next location we have is theater, a popcorn read. So originally I was planning on reading the 5th Finlay Donovan book for this, but it actually came in from my library much earlier than expected, and I'm reading it right now because I didn't want to have to play library chicken with this. So I don't necessarily have a set book for this one right now, but if it comes to a point where we are trying to enter the theater and I need to select a book and I haven't already read one that would satisfy this, I think I'm just going to go ahead and select a Freida McFadden. We all know that Freida McFadden is the queen of popcorn thrillers, and I just know that any book that I select by her is going to be a quick, easy, good, fun, fast time. And so Freida McFadden is at the top of my list to satisfy this. All right, next we have Pool, which is to read a book with double letters in the title, and they don't have to be next to each other like pool. So it doesn't have to have like 2 O's next to each other or something like that. Now, again, I have a lot of options for this, right? Into the Drowning Deep would satisfy this because drowning and deep both start with D. I also have The Sirens, which starts and ends with an S. So there are plenty of options that I have for this. But the one that I already had selected for this was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. And this is definitely going to be a very top priority read for me in May. So this is the book that is going to satisfy that for me. All right, and then the next room is the arcade. And the prompt for this is to read an underrated book. So I have actually decided that I'm going to use a book from my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR to satisfy this, because one of the prompts for Our Fantasy Bingo is to read a book that is a hidden gem. Now, this was a prompt that I was originally going to skip, but I think I found a book that I actually do want to read, and I plan on reading that as soon as I finish the other fantasy that I'm currently in the middle of, because this is yet another one that doesn't have an audiobook, so I want to go ahead and get started on it as soon as possible. It has 679 ratings, and it's called In the Wake of the Wicked by V.B. Lacey. It says, wherever she goes, darkness follows. Orphaned with a tragic past and a penchant for wicked deeds, Rose Wolf has never been accepted by her people. She's learning to live in the darkness, content with her alchemy magic and her quiet apothecary, when a terrible curse sweeping the land forces her to enter the Decemvirate, a magical tournament among the strongest of the Empire. Rose is pulled from the shadows and thrown into a world of power games, deadly trials, and entanglements with a handsome, mysterious rebel. All right, okay. With divisions in the Empire worsening, there may be more at stake than becoming the champion. Secrets about her magic and encounters with the all-powerful Emperor make Rose question everything, leading her down a path she may never come back from. So that just kind of caught my eye, and like I said, I'm intrigued. On its way to me. I plan on starting it as soon as possible, and I think it would be a really great book to read for the underrated prompt for Escape the Readathon, as well as the hidden gem prompt for Our Fantasy Bingo. All right, and then the very final room is the gym, and the prompt for this is incredibly appropriate, a book that you have been putting off, and for this I have the absolute perfect option, All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This is the longest standing book on my virtual TBR. It is also the longest standing book on my physical TBR. Now, I wasn't putting this off because I didn't want to read it. I was putting it off because this is technically part of a series, right? There are a couple of full full-length novels before this one and a couple of novellas that feature characters, and it's recommended that you read all of those prior to this. And when I first got this book, I did have the intention of reading all of those books first, but over time I have really realized that I'm just not interested in Colleen Hoover's sequels. A lot of her books really don't need sequels. I think the only book that I really felt like I enjoyed the sequel was It Starts With Us, which was the second book in the It Ends With Us duology. But a lot of her sequels are just like the same book written from a different person's perspective, and I don't like that, or they're just completely unnecessary. And I read the first book, which was Hopeless, I believe, recently, a couple of weeks ago, and it was fine. It wasn't my favorite Colleen Hoover for sure. It was definitely dated, and after my experience with that, and knowing that I don't really care about her sequels, knowing that I really don't also read novellas, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this one because it has been there plaguing me for a really long time. So I really need to get to this. I really just need to suck it up and get to this, even though I might not necessarily be in the mood, but I do know that this is going to be harder hitting. It's going to deal very heavily with infertility and a marriage that is suffering because of infertility, and I've heard really great things about this. So I am excited but a little bit nervous to get to it just because it has been hanging around on my TBR for so long. Okay, so now let's quickly talk about Mystery and Mayhem. I do not have a set TBR for Mystery and Mayhem just because, like I said, a lot of the books I'm going to be able to fit into these prompts pretty easily. For example, Onyx Storm has a book with a map. It is definitely going to be an author that I've read. It is top of my TBR. It is definitely going to be a favorite genre. It has an animal in it, if you count dragons as an animal. And I do believe the Fourth Wing series is one of the host's favorites. I could be wrong about that. I would have to go back and double check, but this is going to tick a lot of boxes. Similarly with the Sirens, this again is going to be an author that I've read. It is absolutely at the top of my TBR. It's going to have multiple POVs. It's going to be a favorite genre, and it's a blue cover and it has objects on the cover. So I'm going to get bonuses for that. Great Big Beautiful Life, again, an author I've read, top of my TBR. It is definitely a favorite genre. It's going to satisfy all of those things. So again, I really don't feel the need to do a curated TBR for Mystery and Mayhem just because I'm going to be able to easily fit books into those prompts. We are embracing the chaos for May. It is going to be all over the place. So now that all of that is out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the gameplay.
All right, everybody, it is time for the next round of the My Bad TBR game. As I will likely have mentioned when I open this video, May is going to be a bit chaotic between Escape the Readathon and Mysteries and Mayhem, so we are just going to do the standard 6 draws, no more, no less, no matter what the board gives us, unless of course I have to draw additional cards and whatnot. But before we go ahead and jump into the gameplay, I did want to let you all know that I'm currently in the process of redoing my board, and I'm going to be adding a few other additional chaotic elements to gameplay. So if there's anything that you might like to see in my TBR game, such as prompts that you might like to see on the board, actions to take if I draw a certain number or something like that, please feel free to leave those in the comments down below. I will be working on the game board probably all throughout May, just in time for the June TBR, and I'm definitely open to feedback, especially with regard to prompts, because I need 60 prompts for the board, and I think I'm still several shy. So whatever you might like to see on the board, please leave those in the comments below. Please kind of make them general, because I have to have prompts that I can use over and over and over, just in case I land on them multiple times. But of course, the board is exactly as we left it, so we are going to go ahead and start off with draw number 1. Okay, we are starting with blue, and I actually currently only have one pawn that is able to go 9. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, we were very close to having to knock this yellow one back into start, but instead we've got nature. So that is nature somewhere on the cover or in the title.
All right, so first I drew the number 9 and I spun the color blue, and that landed me on the prompt of nature. So I have to read a book with nature in the title or on the cover. And I definitely think The Sirens by Amelia Hart fits this perfectly. I mean, this entire cover is 100% nature. So I will be using this to satisfy the nature prompt.
All right, draw number 2. Okay, one of the red pawns gets to go into their safety zone, so let me go ahead and flip the board really quick. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and take this guy and put him into his safety zone, and that will actually free up this space just in case I want to get that guy out of start. So we're going to go ahead and do a challenge pull for this guy.
All right, next I drew a queen. I spun the color red. That meant my red was able to get into the safety zone, but because there are no prompts associated with the safety zone squares, I have to go ahead and pull from the challenge cup. And also, I just realized that I forgot to mention at the very beginning of this video that I wasn't going to do any challenge pulls, but the TBR game dictated it, so I'm at least going to be doing one. Now, I will say that I have satisfied the vast majority of challenge prompts, so there are probably going to be a lot in here that I've already satisfied, so we are just going to have to pull. 'Pull" until we come up with one. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, we were very close to having to knock this yellow one back into start. So I drew a queen. I spun the color red. That meant my red was able to get into the safety zone, but because there are no prompts associated with the safety zone squares, I have to go ahead and pull from the challenge cup. And also, I just realized that I forgot to mention at the very beginning of this video that I wasn't going to do any challenge pulls, but the TBR game dictated it, so I'm at least going to be doing one. Now, I will say that I have satisfied the vast majority of challenge prompts, so there are probably going to be a lot in here that I've already satisfied, so we are just going to have to pull until we come up with one. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, we were very close to having to knock this yellow one back into start. So I drew a queen. I spun the color red. That meant my red was able to get into A haunting book. Okay, so this is actually one of the challenges that I have not yet satisfied. So I guess that works out. And I'm very, very thankful that Into the Drowning Deep was selected as my patron pick because I think that that's going to work out perfectly for this. So I'm going to be using Into the Drowning Deep to satisfy the challenge pool of reading a haunting book.
All right, draw number 3. All right, we got a yellow this time, and I actually only have one active yellow pawn on the playing field. He is all the way across the board at the moment, so let me go ahead and flip the board and we'll see what we can do. Okay, 1, 2, 3. That is summer, so a book that gives me summer vibes.
All right, next I drew the number 3 and I spun the color yellow. That landed me on the prompt of summer. So to read a book with summer vibes. And for this, I think I'm going to be reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry because I mean, look at that cover. That cover is screaming summer vibes to me. I don't know if it's set in the summer, but I think like a lot of Emily Henry's books are set in the summer. So I'm going to assume that it is, but even if it's not, this color, 100% summer vibes.
All right, draw number 4. Okay, we got a 6, and a 6 is a straightforward movement, but it does mean I have to poll my patrons to see what book I actually do read for the prompt. So let's see what I land on. Okay, yellow again, so I'm just going to move him right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shortest book on TBR. Okay, so that's not actually something I can pull my patrons for just because the shortest book on my TBR is the shortest book on my TBR. So we'll go ahead and draw again, and whatever prompt I land on for that, I will pull my patrons for.
All right, next I drew a 6, and again I spun the color yellow, and that landed me on the prompt to read the shortest book on my TBR. Now typically when I get a 6, I have to pull my patrons, and since it landed me on the prompt of reading the shortest book on my TBR, I didn't think that I was going to be able to do that. However, I did remember that as part of our fantasy bingo, I have to read 5 short stories, and undoubtedly each of these short stories is going to be the shortest book on my TBR, right? So I actually haven't selected all of the stories that I could potentially read for this because there are a lot of Amazon original short stories that I could potentially read to satisfy this. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go through and select a handful of the short stories that are really interesting to me, and then I'm going to pull my patrons to see which one they think that I should read. So that ended up working out perfectly because I'm going to be able to do the Patreon poll as well as satisfy this prompt as well as satisfy an Our Fantasy Bingo prompt.
All right, draw number 5. All right, well, we knew that the board could not continue to be nice to us. We've got a joker. You can ignore the prompt that is actually on the card because currently I am pulling from a cup of prompts that were given to me by my patrons. So we'll go ahead and figure out which of the pawns is moving back into their start, and then we will go ahead and pull a patron prompt. All right, poor green has had no action throughout this entire game. The first time we spend a green, he's got to go back into start. So I'm going to take this guy here, move him here. Now, as you can see, this means I currently have no active green pawns on the playing field. I'm going to leave it like this for the remainder of the game. Luckily, we only have one draw left, but starting next game, I will be able to move one of these guys back out onto the playing field per my rule that I'm always allowed to have one pawn of each color out on the playing field. But if my next draw also happens to spin a green and I can't move the green, I have to take a punishment for that. So we will go ahead and pull a prompt from my patron prompt cup to see what I will be reading for the joker.
All right, and then I drew a joker. I spun the color green, so green had to go back into its start, and I have to go ahead and pull one of the prompts from my patrons to see what kind of book that I'm going to be reading. I'm really scared because they were not necessarily always nice when giving me prompts, so we're gonna see what I have to endure here. A book with an earthly element in the title. I don't think that I could have asked for a better pull because how many books on my TBR could potentially satisfy this? But I think what I'm going to use for this is Onyx Storm because Storm is an earthly element in my opinion, and it is actually in the title and not just on the cover. That worked out perfectly. My mind is absolutely blown. So thank you to my patrons for being really kind to me on this one because this is going to work out perfectly.
All right, and then draw number 6. Hopefully this one is kind to me. Okay, so a king is essentially a do whatever I want kind of card. I can simply decide to mood read a book. I can go ahead and skip a prompt entirely. Whatever I want to do, I can do with the king. So I'm going to hold on to this and see if I want to use it for this round of gameplay, especially with everything that is going on in May. Otherwise, I might decide to skip a prompt or do something like that. So that is going to be it, friends. That is going to be the end of this round of gameplay. And hopefully in June, you will see a whole new board and all new rules. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to restart gameplay gameplay, I'm going to put the pawns back onto the board exactly as they are now. They just won't be likely on the same prompts or anything like that, if that makes sense. Because I only just recently started this round of gameplay in January, I don't feel the need to restart it just because I'm refreshing the board. As a reminder, please feel free to leave in the comments down below anything you might like to see incorporated into my TBR game. I think some of y'all will be really happy with some of the things that I'm going to be incorporating into it going forward. But until then, y'all, this is where we are leaving it for now.
All right, and then the very final draw was a king, and you know, a king is kind of like a do whatever I want to do. It's like mood read, it's skip a prompt, it's do whatever I want to do. And as of right now, I really don't feel like I need to do that because I feel like a lot of the prompts that I landed on are already fitting seamlessly in with what I had plans to read for the month. But if I do end up needing to use the king as like a get out of jail free, I absolutely will consider that for sure. But for now, I think we're good. All right, everyone, there you have it. Those are all the books that I plan to read for the month of May. I'm really excited about all of the books on my TBR. I think it is going to be a phenomenal reading month. Please comment down below and let me know if you are participating in either or both of these readathons. Again, I would love to have you come and join Team Lassies for Mystery and Mayhem. Please let me know some of the books on your May TBR that you are really, really excited to get to. Or if you made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and just leave me a shellfish or oceany emoji in honor of the sirens into the drowning deep. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I typically post 2 videos a week, one on Wednesdays, one on Sundays, and I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos. Or if you'd prefer to connect with me outside of BookTube, you can always find links to my Goodreads, Instagram, and Patreon linked down below, along with any books talked about in the video. Until next time, y'all. Bye.